professors who have done extensive research into mass shootings right here in Rhode Island, including Kyle Gamache, a psychology professor at Roger Williams University. He joins us now to talk about his work. Professor, thanks for being here with us.
Thank you.
Now, your research looks at the characteristics associated with active shooter events. Can you explain that a bit further, what your research looked into?
Absolutely. So we conducted two different research studies looking at active shooting events that occurred in the United States from 1966 to 2013, and then a second batch from 2014 to 2023. And we were interested in looking at the traits and characteristics of the people that commit these kinds of crimes, their background, and any kinds of characteristics or behaviors that might offer any kind of insight or predictive utility to try to prevent these kinds of events.
In relation to the shooting at Brown University, obviously we do not know a lot about the gunman himself. What can you tell us generally about mass shooters, the people who are behind them?
What I can tell you generally, based on the data set that we looked at, was very similar to the research that the Secret Service and the FBI conducted in the early 2000s, that these people have really diverse characteristics. There's not necessarily a useful profile of the kind of person that commits these kinds of crimes. However, many of them have had a past history of behavioral issues, either at work, at home, or with law enforcement or police. And oftentimes there is a concept that they know of as leakage, which was a term coined by the FBI in 2000, that people somewhat give some information that they're going to commit these kinds of acts in the past, either on social media or by making statements in the past. So those are common trends that we saw in our research when we looked at the shooters that we looked at.
When looking at other mass shootings across the decades, how do you compare those to what happened at Brown? Obviously, we have seen an increase in school shootings in general since Columbine. So comparing them, what can you tell us?
What we can kind of tell you comparing it is that while the details of the Brown event are still developing, based on what I've seen over the last 2 days and my colleagues have looked at, is that this event seems to be very similar to other events in that they are very, very destructive, highly violent, and often involve people that are very, very vulnerable. I would be surprised if we learned things that really deviate from that with this event.
That being said, what do you think that we'll see going forward just from your expertise as the investigation continues? What kind of has happened in previous shootings that seem to happen in most shootings?
What seems to happen in a lot of the shootings that we looked at is we had looked at roughly 150 of these events since 1966. I would expect that this individual has had some kind of issues in the past, behaviorally at jobs or at work. I don't know if they're going to be associated with Brown University specifically, but I would not be surprised if they had had past issues at school, and that they had meticulously planned this event, but perhaps had posted about it on social media or contacted other individuals, made threats before. That's what I would be expecting as we learn more.
All right, Professor Gamache, thank you so much for joining us. I wish it was under better circumstances, but we appreciate you sharing your research with us.
Thank you. Take care.